Hi, Natasha. How are you?
Hi, Jenna. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on the show today. We are going to talk all about happiness. You have some really cool techniques to share, so I'm super excited.
Mhm.
So let's tell the viewers a little bit about kind of who you work with, what problems you solve.
For sure. I do a lot of individual counseling, mostly with adults, and I work with a range of people, anywhere from 18, 19 to middle aged. And generally, the people that I work with have challenges in the areas of anxiety or depression. But sometimes it's also just day-to-day life stressors, transitions, whether that's, getting a new job or losing a job. So just working on a few things, mainly based on how to cope with some of these things and, find ways to find a little bit more contentment in how their day-to-day life is going.
Absolutely. And I know when you're struggling with anxiety and depression, just finding a little bit of peace, a little bit of, calm, a little bit of clarity can be so life-changing, right? It can really change the trajectory of your day and of your life really cumulatively. So yeah, that's amazing.
Definitely. And I forgot too, as you were saying, another area that I'm really interested in too is working with women and self-esteem. And as you were talking a little bit about the anxiety and depression and how that impacts our life, it really does affect the way we see ourselves, right? And so working with individuals and trying to kind of work on their self-concept and sense of self is something else that I tend to focus on.
Oh, that is so interesting. I think we're going to need to do a whole other show just on that because I think it's so relevant.
Anytime. I would love to.
So today we're going to talk about happiness, and I was wondering, what does happiness mean to you?
So I was thinking a bit about this after just kind of knowing what you do, and I think a little bit about happiness to me is kind of like multifactorial. So I think that to me, it's sort of those small moments, and the technique that I'm going to share is kind of in line with that. But to me, it's about sort of really taking in what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So whether that's this, cup of tea that I'm enjoying this morning, or whether that's something a little bit bigger, like a flight to Calgary that I finally have booked, those moments, but just kind of taking them in and really being present in those moments and really fully being immersed in those. So that's one thing. And then by multifactorial, I mean that, it's kind of based on my values and my traditions from my culture, from my family. And so I think another big piece to me is like connection with others is happiness. So yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
I see it.
I'm kind of reminded of this morning. I went with my daughter to sports ball. Usually her dad takes her, but I went along too today. And so
yeah,
it was out in the sunshine. There were people there. Like it was such a beautiful, we were running around. It was so fun. For moments when I was like, I could have gotten frustrated because she like wasn't listening, wasn't like following directions.
Sure.
She was like running around. And I found myself just reminding myself to like, okay, it's okay. Like, let's just breathe. Let's just be in the moment and just enjoy it.
Totally.
Right. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, don't you find it kind of changes the perspective from it just being like an ordinary moment or a frustrating moment even to sort of just more being like, that is enjoyable. Or I do feel a sense of a pleasant emotion coming up.
I think also, when you're used to feeling anxious all the time, it can be sometimes like you have to remind yourself that it's okay to feel okay. Like, in those moments, sometimes I'm like, it's okay to just enjoy this. Like, it's safe to just enjoy this, right?
Exactly. And I think that's huge because when we talk a little bit about the technique, it's all about practice. So as you're saying, it's like this reminder, we almost have to intentionally shift that. And it's not to say that it's easy, but there are certain things that can help us to make that, make happiness a little bit more intentional or part of our day. And even if, people are going through pain and suffering, being able to just kind of shift to that, even for a few moments, can really build up some resilience to some of the pain and the suffering that's kind of ongoing in someone's life.
Absolutely. Yes. So that brings us right to the technique. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what the technique is.
For sure. So I guess when I was talking a little bit about the work that I do with my clients, I tend to work from a bit more of a CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and people can look that up. It's quite well known for counseling techniques, and a DBT approach. So DBT stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. And what I really like about DBT, just generally, I'll just give a quick overview for those of you that don't know about it, is that it allows us to kind of look at this real balance between acceptance and change. And, you know, I find that that's sometimes really hard to do because we want to move and change the way things are going for us, but it can be really hard to do that. And so sometimes just accepting where we are in the moment and accepting our reality as it is gives us a little bit of, I guess, a grounded feeling to help us then make the changes we need. So it's kind of this dialectic between the two.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I've been working on acceptance in my own life. And because, you know, when you want change, you're so right. Like you can't really, it's very difficult to change your life when you're stuck struggling against it. Right.
Yeah.
So I've been really acceptance. I'm curious, what are some of the ways that you help your clients to kind of accept their situation?
Yeah, so I think that the big thing is, first of all, you know, being able to just have clients practice, like, to observe what is their experience. Because a lot of us don't know what we're feeling at times, or we may not know what is it that we have to accept. What is it that's kind of the struggle that we're facing? So to just learn to identify and notice, like, what's going on for me. And then part of it is just, again, practicing or taking some time to, I guess, understand that it's okay. I may not be where I want to be, but what's a little part of today or a little part of my being now that I can be okay with? It's not as though we're approving, you know, whatever's happened in our life or the circumstance that we're in, but it's mostly to just say, okay, what's a small part that I can find that I can be okay with? And then tabling some of the other stuff so it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
Okay.
So mindfulness, which again, another day we can talk about this as a technique. And you may have already.
Mindfulness is so important, and I don't think we can ever talk about it too much because it's
totally
constant reminding, right? Like it takes constant reminding to, like, okay, I can be in the present moment. Let me sit with this. Let me just.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you have the kind of acceptance in order to kind of eventually create change. And so what's the happiness technique there?
Yes, for sure. And just one other thing about the acceptance too is, you know, sometimes we don't receive the validation, or we may not receive kind of this idea from other people that the emotions we have are okay. Like it's okay to feel anger, or it's okay to feel sadness, or not feel as content all the time. And so that's what might be prompting us to rush towards change. And so with the acceptance piece, it's just kind of being okay with where we're at. Yeah. And giving ourselves that self-validation, which again is practice. But yeah. So the happiness technique, if we move right into that.
Sorry, I just want to,
yeah,
I'm so
sure.
Sorry, I just really wanted to highlight what you said there about self-validation, like validating your own feelings and not waiting for other people to do it for you. I think that is so hugely important just in managing your day, right? Like, riding the emotional waves that come.
Yes.
And not getting stuck in something. Because when you validate your own emotions and accept that you're feeling the way that you're feeling and that that's okay, then the emotions can flow through your body. And, you know, it takes about 90 seconds or a couple of minutes when you actually let your emotions flow through your body.
Right.
And then you're on to the next one. So I think that's just so incredibly important. So thank you for
Exactly. Yes. And you said something where it was like, you know, not pushing against it, right? So the self-validation is almost a tool that helps us to, as you said, flow with it rather than really being up against ourselves almost and pushing against whatever's happening for us.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the technique, the happiness technique, is sort of twofold. It's the first part is, how do we accumulate these positive emotions or work towards a happier life in the short term, and then how do we do this more long term? So the first part is about accumulating these positive events day to day. So do, one thing that's pleasant. And there's a wide range of activities that, people can do, and they differ for each one of us. But making it a point and making it sort of intentional that you're going to do one pleasant activity a day. And I know that this can be hard because for people who really can't get out of bed some days, or the anxiety is so debilitating that it feels like, well, I can't think about going swimming. For example, I used to love swimming. How am I going to do that again? Or I want to go for a walk, but I'm afraid that there's going to be 10 or 15 people in my neighborhood, and with COVID anxiety, right? There's a lot going on. And so it's really important to remember here that pleasant event can be really small, and it can be something that's in your safe space. It doesn't have to be like a major event. It can be very small. But the thing that makes that pleasant event pleasant is that you're sort of all invested in it. So as I was kind of saying earlier, it's about really enjoying whatever pleasant event you choose. So Jenna, if I can ask you, I know you shared about going to sport ball with your daughter, but like thinking about a pleasant event today so far, what's kind of one small thing you might have done, even just being home before our conversation?
I would have made a cup of tea this morning, and I sat and I drank it and I like allowed myself to drink it in peace.
Right. Thank you. So that, right, to me kind of highlights too, that it's this doing the one thing at a time, because we get so caught up in multitasking. And for someone who has had sort of mild anxiety that I work with all the time, and I try to fight against it, it feels like I need to put my attention to 5 or 6 different things, right? So instead, it's, try to do one small pleasant event a day. And for people who are afraid of this, it doesn't have to be big. And to get ideas, think about things you used to do as a young person, or think about things that maybe you used to do when you were feeling healthy, and trying to do a little step towards that. And then the second piece is just doing it with one mindfully. So basically one thing at a time, just involve yourself in that cup of tea, taste it, sit, don't respond to your emails, that kind of thing. If you're going for a walk, just walk and enjoy kind of what's around you. So that's kind of the one thing. And what this helps us do is build this piggy bank of pleasant emotions. Because every time, so maybe when you had that cup of tea, what's kind of a feeling or a body sensation that came up for you, Jenna?
Like a calmness. I felt myself breathing a little bit more deeply. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't thinking about anything, which was nice.
Right. It sounds like a real break, right? Just a pause. And so that feeling of calmness, you can kind of put it into your piggy bank, right? So, people might be thinking, but how is this going to help me in the long term? Like, it feels like, how is it going to help me if I have that cup of tea or take that bath? What's that really going to do? Is that really happiness? It just feels like moments, right? And that is the case, but it's accumulating these positive emotions in the short term, adding them to your piggy bank, so that when we're having a day of upset, it just comes a little bit more naturally to take out those pleasant events that you've already tried in the past. That's where the practice kind of comes in. You're practicing these skills, and then when you really need them, you can kind of pull it out. Or you can have a memory, right, of that pleasant emotion that came up as well.
It's really cool, because even as you talked about just the cup of tea, and you asked me questions, I had to think about it. I had to think, how was I feeling? I would have just let that moment pass me by completely. Mm-hmm. It would not have gone in a piggy bank. It would have just been a moment.
Right. Yeah.
About it, and I can almost feel it right now, which is very cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And thanks for sort of sharing that experience, because, that allows me to sort of highlight, right, that we can make, not any moment, but we can intentionally make a particular moment pleasant, right? And, for people who are, say, their parents, they're working parents, or people who are single and have a lot of family responsibilities, they might think, well, where am I going to find the time to put this pleasant event in? So that's where a little bit of the problem solving comes in. Try to plan it ahead and sort of make it that intention that every day I'm going to do something for myself. And the other piece, if you can't fit it in, is to reflect on your day and say, like I just did with you, like, what was that pleasant event? Okay, drinking that cup of tea, or having some time with your daughter, that kind of thing. And I think it's just really important to let our viewers know that sometimes you really might need that push. So we might fight against ourselves. We may feel like we're not deserving, right, of these pleasant emotions. And so taking small steps and just practicing that small step for a week or two at a time, and then adding the variety can be really useful.
Yeah. And I don't remember if I shared this off camera or on camera, but I know for me, like when I have moments of happiness, sometimes I fight against it. Sometimes I'm like, it feels a bit scary, or it feels wrong because I'm not used to it, right? It's kind of unfamiliar. And so I tell myself in those moments, like, it's safe to feel okay. It's safe to feel good. I give myself permission to feel good, and allow myself that moment, and let myself know that it doesn't have to be scary. It's okay if it is, but I can kind of still be in the moment. I can breathe through it.
Yeah. I think that that's really, really important too, because that's about kind of refocusing on the positive emotion or the pleasant event when our mind sort of wanders into the negative. And when we feel like, I'm ruminating about, say, like somebody who made me really upset, rather than enjoying my dinner with my partner. Or as you said, like the moment where we feel like this feels really different. It's not even maybe that I want to fight against it, but I'm so not used to this that how can I be in this feeling, right? So the first few times it might just be observing it, and then just these moments happen so quickly too. So we want to savor them and just put our full focus and attention into that moment.
Yeah.
Or that activity.
Yeah. So for our viewers, it will be, just to recap it, every single day, having an intention to do one thing or a few things if you can, but I guess just start with one that's pleasant and that you can kind of put all of your energy and focus into. And while you're doing that thing, you recognize the feelings that are going on, allow yourself to feel calm, allow yourself to feel peace and happiness, and then just kind of reflect on that after, like, okay, put it in your piggy bank. So your mental piggy bank, where you're saying that, or you could even maybe write it down. I don't know if you suggest write it down on like a list.
I think that's great, right? Because then that's actually a really good idea, because what you can do then is refer back to, it can be your own unique list, right, of pleasant events. And when you're needing a boost, you can go back to that. So I actually really like that. Rather than what I was thinking with the mental piggy bank, it might actually work to either take a picture in that moment on your phone, or as you said, write a list of the activities you did. So, yeah.
And so then you practice those emotions, you practice mindfulness to it as you progress 1 or 2 weeks down the road. Then do you add on to that, or do you just sort of keep doing that same thing?
Yeah. So for the pleasant events, kind of the accumulating pleasant events, pleasant emotions through pleasant events in the short term, it's all about just doing that one thing a day. Okay. And you can progress it maybe by doing something a little bit scarier or a little bit more intense. With exercise, maybe you went for like a 10-minute walk, and now you're going to try the 20-minute walk, or swimming instead of walking, right? But just one thing a day in terms of the short-term happiness. Kind of research has shown that it works if we do it long. Well, the BBT research has shown that if we do that long enough, our emotions do start to change. And our emotions, it is a little bit more natural to feel okay with that happiness and contentment, rather than fight against it or not spend as much time there.
That makes so much sense, because I know for myself, and maybe for some of our viewers out there, that it's tempting to want to just change everything and think, I just need like a whole lifestyle makeover. I mean, like, different. But what you're saying makes so much sense, because you do this one thing a day, you get used to it, and then you might find that you're feeling those same positive emotions at other points of the day, right? Because you're now allowing it. you might find that it can come up a little bit more easily. There's not as much resistance to it. And eventually you're sort of feeling that way more throughout your day.
Exactly. Yeah, thanks for summing that up. And also for really highlighting how it is a piggy bank, because it is in that way. You can come back to it at any time.
Yes. So people have done that once they've started accumulating their positive emotions through pleasant events. The next step for people.
Yeah. So, we might ask, like, what about long-term happiness? Like, and I know that there's lots of different ways that long-term happiness can be built. But one of the things that I really like that I'm going to share today is about, how do we create sort of a meaningful life? And that's such a big question, but I know that, some of the talks that you've had and other books and such people can read can help us in our own way answer that question. But one of the longer term, or the skills to kind of accumulate happiness in the longer term, is about, it's kind of twofold. The first thing is to spend a little bit of time reflecting on what are my values, right? So with those short-term pleasant events, they might be a little bit more temporary, people find, right? But if we can sort of start to find these permanent positive events, those become a little bit more long-term. And one of the more permanent positive events is living our lives according to our own personal values and achieving the goals that are important to us.
Yes.
And that can be hard, right? Even as I'm sort of talking a little bit about that, I think, well, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to identify their values. And, it can feel very daunting. And so there are some questions to kind of, maybe I can just pose a couple questions to the viewers to ask yourselves, right? Because first of all, I guess, when we think of values, there are things that are important in life. There are things that we cherish, and they're sort of, we can look at them as the things that are our highest priorities, right? So they're not goals, and they're not sort of outcomes of things. They're just these pieces of life that are important to us, things that we cherish. And so, it's important to know that our values change over time, and to figure out which parts of our values still exist from our family of origin, from the families that we come from. What are the values we want to take with us? So which ones are our own and which ones are other people's? And are we comfortable with still following on with the values that others have given us, or do we want to drop some? It's kind of, the question is sort of, what gives me my life direction and meaning? Is a good question to kind of ask. What are some priorities I have? What are some things that are important to me? Those are kind of three questions to assess what are my values in the first place.
Amazing. So it could be something like, could you give us some examples of values? Like when you're talking about what a value is?
For sure. So, there are some that are, when we think of things that are important to us, for some people it might be family, or a value might be friendship, relationships. But for other people, it might be things like patience, or honesty, integrity, right? So there are things that we can't really touch and feel, things that we can't really feel and grasp, but we kind of really feel them within. Or it might be work. For some people, they might value making a living of some kind, right? So it's a priority rather than a goal. So it's not like being on time would be a goal versus maybe punctuality, or something that kind of extends beyond one situation might be a value, a bit more of a pattern, or a theme in your life that you see as important.
So people can start to reflect on what gives their life meaning by thinking about, what is it that kind of drives them right now? What is it that's most important to them? What do they find themselves spending the most time on? And that's interesting when you think about what you find yourself spending the most time on versus your values, because sometimes those can be different. And that's what's causing some friction within you. If you really value family, but you find that you're spending a lot of time with, let's say, friends or on work or something else that's not family, then you might be like, oh, okay, I'm not actually living aligned with my values. So that
Exactly.
do some problem solving around that.
That's exactly it. Thank you. Because I think that as you're putting that out there, it kind of made me think of sort of another way of describing the value too, is like it is our compass, right? It kind of guides us. And as you said, then we can kind of take a look and see, how am I spending my time? Is it in line with that? Is it with the compass? Is it kind of, gearing me in the right direction, or is it kind of setting me away from that? And am I in a totally different direction, or am I halfway there, right? So definitely. And then that's where kind of the goals come in mind, is if we're spending our time and it's not synced up with our values, that's where we might feel pain, we might feel anxiety, we might feel stress, sadness. Whereas if we can shift our life just a little bit at a time, so that our goals and the way that we spend our day is a little bit more in line with that value system, then, as you said, it gives us just a little bit of kind of relief and a little bit more contentment and a little bit more joy, which day to day then accumulates into sort of a life that's sort of a bit more meaningful.
I think that's so phenomenal, because I found that recently I've been using values to guide my decisions. So like going back to sports ball, right? I had an hour of time that I could have worked out. And one of my values is a healthy lifestyle, right? That is. And then my other value is family. And so I actually asked myself that question, like, what move is more aligned with my values right now? What move will I feel better about?
Yeah. Yes.
Was kind of sticking rigidly to my original plan. So
for sure. And I think that's really important to consider, is to be a little bit flexible based on what value is standing out to you right now. Because we tend to have a lot of different values, right? Some of us can be confused about what our values are, and other people feel like, I have a lot of these values, but I don't know how to prioritize them. So it's good to just ask today, or in this moment, like you did, what's my highest priority, right? Is it healthy living, or is it family? And it's okay to choose whichever, but as long as the action step you're taking is sort of in line with whichever one you choose as your highest priority, then you're going to feel that sense of relief and contentment, and allow yourself to have a little bit of that joy at sports ball, right? Rather than maybe if you had gone with the exercise, you might have felt a little bit of like a pull of, or resentment or sadness, missing out.
Totally. So there's the pleasant events and emotions. There is, what is my highest value and what are my values? So just kind of narrowing down, where do I want to spend my time? What do I want to prioritize? And then looking at life to see, well, is it a match, right? Is what I'm doing a match with what my values are? And if it's not, that might explain some of that resistance or sadness or guilt or whatever is coming up for you that you might not have otherwise known, like what the cause was.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. And to summarize it, to kind of get viewers to sort of think about, how do I kind of try this in action? It's helpful to identify like the one value to work on, because there's lots of values that someone might have. And the next thing to do is, can I identify a couple goals that will get me closer to that value? And so it's a good starting point. And then to break it down even further, if people are like, but the goals are still sort of, too big to get to, and how am I going to do that? You can also just choose one action step that you can do for the week towards that goal. So we can even break it down further.
Right. So if one of your values is living a healthy lifestyle, and you notice that you're doing that, your action step can be going for a 20-minute walk every day or something like
that. Exactly. And say for someone like me, who for a while was kind of out of exercise for a bit, it might even be the action step this week could be like picking out my pair of runners. Like, I need to go get my runners again, right? So it might even be starting there. But if my value and my highest priority right now is healthy living, it's like, great, the goals are working out daily or 3 times a day. And then this week, maybe my action step is to like get the gear. And then next week it's going to be to like get out and or call a friend and see if I can get some walking dates with them.
Yeah, I love that. I love the focus on little things, like small to make lasting changes in your life. I think that is so important. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And so I think and then the practice is where the mastery piece kind of comes in of, you know, just doing this day to day and kind of keeping that in mind so that you're able to really build in those moments of contentment over time.
So what's a way, thank you, Natasha, so much. What's a way for people to kind of remember what to do? Like I'm just imagining maybe like a sheet of paper with something like, like maybe you have a weekly calendar that has like, I don't know, an agenda or something for the week. And you can do something like, what's my pleasant event for today? Value am I really feeling today? And what's the step that I can take towards that value? Something like that.
That's great. I think that would be lovely, whether that's on your phone or you have a whiteboard or something that you can either do, if you do better day to day, setting that intention, or it could be a week, right? And sort of having that diary of pleasant events. That's a great idea. And then at the bottom, sort of saving some space, like what's my value of the week, or, you know, my highest priority for today, and then what's a goal that I can use for the week, set for the week.
I love that so much, Natasha. Thank you. I think this is such a valuable technique, and one that I hadn't really learned about before, you know, like the way that you laid it out, it's so doable. It's so like, it's not easy by any means, but it's simple.
No.
It's simple. Yes. You can conceptualize it.
Exactly. Thank you. Thanks, Jenna. And that's what I find about some of these skills is that it really helps to break it down a little bit and make it a bit more manageable so that we can all start to work towards like a happier life.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm going to have you on the show multiple times. There's so much more that we can talk about.
I can't wait.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you.
Find you if they want to get in touch and ask you questions or book a session with you.
Yeah, for sure. So right now I'm contracting through Richmond Counseling. So you can find me at richmondcounseling.com, and then you can see my bio, and you can get in touch with me through email.
Amazing. Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenna. Thanks for all the work you're doing.
Oh, it's so much fun. I get to learn from you.
Fun too, yeah.